I don't know exactly what he's going to be doing, how much he's bringing in. Frank Reich called the plays in Indianapolis. I'm not sure how that's going to translate for Philadelphia, but what I do know is from a skill position standpoint, we're getting a healthy Jalen Reagor, which I don't know what that looks like. Devonta Smith, how's his game going to translate to the NFL? I just know he was unbelievable at Alabama. I'm willing to embrace a lot of these unknowns. You're giving me plus 3.5 against a team that I know has a bad defense in Atlanta. Sign me up for it every day of the week.
Jalen Reagor not at practice the first day, or not at training camp for the first day. But listen, that doesn't mean anything, right? I think he had like lower body tightness, whatever that means. I don't think you're crazy. If the Eagles are capable of staying healthy, that's what it comes down to. The offensive line last year had no Dillard, no Brandon Brooks, an injured Lane Johnson. Jason Peters was exhumed from the grave to come and stand on the line and get beat every single day of the week. So there are pluses here. The only thing is, like, Jalen Hurts had the second lowest completion percentage ahead of only Jared Stidham, who attempted 21 passes.
How many games did he play, though? That's the question.
Well, no. This is from weeks 14 through 17 is what I isolated.
Gotcha.
I'm not saying that bothers me. When you're throwing the guys like J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, and
it's not ideal.
And Jackson was out. Jeffrey was a shell of himself anyway. He was out. Jalen Reagor was hobbled
for second.
You get Devontae Smith in here, and you get Miles Sanders more involved in the passing game. He dropped a lot of passes last year, but only dropped 2% of passes in his rookie season. I expect to bounce back there. Reagor going into his second year. And they have a second-round pick in Goddard, 2 first-round receivers, and a second-round running back. Like, they should be good enough this year. I'm with you, Eric. And I'll go to another team that not a 3.5-point dog, but actually a 2.5-point favorite. I'm laying the 2.5 on the Tennessee Titans at home against the Arizona Cardinals. Now, I know what you're thinking. The Cardinals are good. Cliff Kingsbury, Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins. I get that. But if you're not even giving if the Titans aren't even laying a field goal at home, to me, that doesn't make a lot of sense. This team was top 6 in run blocking last year, at a 2,000-yard rusher, racked up 1,100 yards for A.J. Brown, and 14 yards shy of 1,000 yards for Corey Davis, and he only played 14 games, okay? So now take Ryan Tannehill, who was actually very good. He was tied for 6th in touchdown passes. He rushed for 7 touchdowns, and supplant Corey Davis for Julio Jones, right? So now you've got Derrick Henry in the backfield. You've got A.J. Brown and Julio Jones lined up across from each other. This is going to be a very good and efficient offense. Even if Arthur Smith is in Atlanta this year, play to your strengths. There's a lot of them on offense. And the Tennessee defense, they're no slouch either. I'm not saying you're coming into the league and expecting them to be the best defense in the world, but I think at home, they score more points than the Arizona Cardinals. I like the Cardinals offense a lot. They're a good team. But all in all, not even laying a field goal at home with the offense and the overall team that you have there, a very good team. With that in mind, I want the Tennessee Titans laying 2.5. I think that moves to 3.5, maybe 4 points as we get closer to week 1.
Yeah, I love that play. What an oversight by me, not even in the Atlanta segment, to bring up the departure of Julio Jones. That is a gigantic piece that is missing from Atlanta. So if you want to talk about Philadelphia being a little bit better off, I mean, Kyle Pitts, we don't know what that's going to look like. But
we're crowning him already as the best tight end.
Rookie tight ends never produce. I'm just going to throw that out there. And I love Kyle Pitts. I think he's probably the best raw talent tight end that we've seen maybe ever at that position. Just maybe that's a little hyperbole, but rookie tight ends do not produce. Just want to throw that out there too. But Tennessee, absolutely in love with this offense, absolutely in love with what they're capable of doing. And Derrick Henry just keeps doing it year after year after year. And if you get in any kind of a slow slug game, you can now pair that with the high octane offense you have with A.J. Brown, with Julio Jones. Just ridiculous the amount of talent they have on that side of the ball. And their defense, no slouch either. So love that play. Well, we talked about the unknowns of the Philadelphia Eagles. How about we talk about something that I do know, and that's that Patrick Mahomes is really good at throwing a football around a yard. He is very, very...
Oh, that tasted terrible. And we are live. Welcome to the MLB Strategy Show. It is Friday, July 30th. I looked at this 5 seconds ago and immediately forgot. That's how bad I am with remembering the dates. It just trips me up. Anyway, it's not important. I'm Josh Engleman. I'm joined by Adam Scherer. We are here to break down a full 15-game MLB slate. We have a ton to talk about coming off of a fairly fun NBA draft show last night, but we're here to talk baseball. Adam, what's going on?
Not much. Yesterday was pretty fun for me too. Not NBA related, but good tournament day. I think the first time I've ever won 2 tournaments on separate slates in the same day. So that was fun. But excited to get back to it and play a 15-gamer today.
Yeah, congratulations. Obviously, right. It's fun to mock each other in general, but it does feel really great when you're picking up W's. It's always nice to see you raking in the loot. So congrats for that one. Did not go the same for me yesterday, but maybe your good fortunes will rub off on me for today.
I hope not. I would like to keep them.
Well, that's okay. I won't be in the 777, whatever you're playing in. So we can both win. How about that?
Yeah, that works. Just stay on FanDuel.
That'll work. Yeah, let's both see. That's the good vibes. I'll win somewhere. You win somewhere. We'll be in great shape. Anyway, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Shout out to Prize Picks for being the presenting sponsor of this show. I would love to mess around and just talk random stuff like your thoughts on Russell Westbrook and all that other good stuff. But 15 games is 15 games. We got too much to do. Are you ready to dive in?
Yeah, let's go.
Kicking it off, Nats and Cubs. Well, do we talk at least a little bit about the Nats to start before we talk about this actual game?
Yeah, well, before you even do that, I was going to say just kind of in general today, make sure you're keeping an eye on news because there's going to be trades. It is nice. Like today should be less of a headache than yesterday because the deadline is 3 hours before lock. So you won't have to worry about guys being late scratched because they get traded or getting pulled early from games. But teams could look drastically different by the deeper dive show than they do right now.
Thoughts on the lack of Max Scherzer and Trey Turner on the Nationals now?
I mean, good for the Nats. They got rid of guys that they weren't going to be able to keep long term. As an Orioles fan who got Yusniel Diaz as the prize piece of the Manny Machado trade, good job for the Nats actually trading guys when they should trade them and getting a solid return from the Dodgers. And also great trade for the Dodgers.
I don't want this to happen, but obviously a Yankees-Dodgers World Series is just like the dream scenario of baseball and pretty fun. What are we supposed to make of these two teams just being literally loaded from top to bottom now? Yeah,
I mean, I still think the NL West is just going to be crazy down to the wire. Like the Giants are in there. I assume they fade. But the Padres are most likely going to make a move or two today and get even better. And they already, were really good. So you have that. And then it's not like the Yankees are running away with the East. They're not even in first place there. And the Red Sox are good too.
45% to make the playoffs per Fangraphs right now.
Right. Yeah. And it's not like the Red Sox are going anywhere. They added Schwarber.
Yeah.
So, I think it's going to be a really, really fun race, especially in the NL West and AL East on the wire.
Yeah. And maybe just like the way that things could break, it could become a very interesting playoffs for baseball. A little bit more juice than it's had in a little bit. So I'm excited to see it. But let's dive in and start talking about that Nats and Cubs matchup for today. 4.3 run implied total for the Nats, 4.7 for the Cubs. No starter really listed for the Nats. I've got it in for John Lester right now. Trevor Williams going for the Cubs. We don't have any ownership going to Lester. I don't think that he's going to get it, even if he is officially named the starter. Trevor Williams, on the other hand, also pulling no ownership. You getting Danny pitching here?
No, I don't really see a reason to. I know Lester had a good start. I think it was his last time out, but still I guess it was 2 starts ago. He went back to being normal his last time out. But still, just a shell of what he used to be, not striking a lot of guys out, not a great matchup against the Cubs, though it could be a much better matchup by 7 o'clock tonight. You could not have Chris Bryant here, but still it's John Lester. There's no real reason on a 15-game slate, I don't think, to be prioritizing him at all.
So I assume everything is updated. I have a very, very different outlook on the Chicago Cubs today, and apparently every single day. than our current top stack odds. How do you feel about the Cubs? Because they are grading out really well for me. In our top stack odds, however, one of the most over-owned teams of the day.
If they still have good hitters, then I like them here. I think it's a good spot against Leicester. If you go with the lineup as currently constructed, I think it's a good spot against Leicester. The problem is you're still running into some pretty low upside guys as you get down the order. But if you have Contreras, Bryant, Wisdom, Baez, that's a lot of power at the top against Leicester, who's only struck out 14% of right-handed hitters this year. He's allowed a 234 ISO, 194 expected ISO. It's a high upside spot for those guys in particular. But again, the issue you run into is you could lose one, maybe two of those guys.
Right. Like, yeah, if Brian ends up getting the boot out of this, it's going to look a lot different. And I mean, I guess there's nothing I could say right now other than if it's what it is now, I think the Cubs are my favorite stack, and I think they're properly owned.
No, I'm not going that far.
Okay. That is where I have them as of right now. They are number one for me on DK, number two for me on FanDuel. It's just a sea of righties getting ready to smack around a John Lester that is not nearly the John Lester that he used to be. I think that profiles really nicely. Right-handed power plays up big time in Washington, and it is just 8 bats, maybe call it 6.5 with legitimate right-handed power. I really like getting to the Cubs today if this Cubs lineup is the Cubs lineup. I think the more likely scenario is this Cubs lineup is not the Cubs lineup and everything changes. But for right now, I'm going to move forward thinking the Cubs are a really nice option.
Yeah, I think like individually, I like them a little bit more than I do as a full stack.
Okay. I'm very surprised to see their location on our top stacks tool.
They're a little bit lower in that than I would expect for a team with a 4.7 implied run total. But there are, a lot of similar teams tonight, and it is still just kind of a mediocre offense, I think.
I also think the Cubs are maybe unnaturally getting pulled up. Yeah, you don't see this sort of split every day, but they've got 5 guys in their projected lineup that have dual eligibility, 3 of which have third base outfield, which is just a lot, a second base, third base, a second base outfield. So I think that they're also really easy to mix and match and fit together. And I think that might be driving them up a little bit more for me as well.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Ultimately, the Cubs are one of the teams that we need to keep our eye on the most. Do you have interest in getting to the Nats on the opposite side against Trevor Williams?
Not a ton. It's just a really weak lineup right now. Turner was already out, but obviously now he's really out. You still have Soto, who looks good. You still have Bell. Trevor Williams is just, I think, a middle-of-the-road pitcher. He's given up power to lefties this year. Actually, he's given up power in general. 207 ISO to lefties, 189 to righties. The expected ISO is a bit lower. So it seems like he's gotten a little bit unlucky. 134 expected ISO to lefties, 168 to righties. But you're still not going to shy away from Juan Soto or Josh Bell. It's just I have trouble getting to really anything else. Josh Harrison is 5K on DraftKings. I don't know when or how or why that happened, but that's really expensive. So it's pretty much just Soto and Bell for me. Interesting.
Okay. I mean, Soto goes without saying, Bell goes without saying. These guys aren't picking up ownership. Like Soto is on FanDuel, he's at 10%, but he's 3% on DK at the 6,100 number. I don't think that price is correct. Luis Garcia in the Nats lineup is pulling Luis Garcia, the pitcher, into my thing. And I was like, 8,800 for a hitter. That's preposterous. It's not changing anything for me. It's just a visual. I have the Nats as like pretty significantly under-owned. Unfortunately, they are showing up dead last in our top stack tool, which again feels oddly low to me. Like every single team plays today. I don't think this Nats offense is amazing. I also don't think it's last either.
I think it's extremely bad.
I mean, Steamer has it as what essentially amounts to an average offense per weighted runs created plus. Then. Yeah, it's not totally ideal, if I'm being honest. Look, it's not exciting. I'm not ultra advocating for them, but if you're getting to Soto and Bell, I don't mind having 2 or 3 more guys in a completely unowned stack on a day like today. There's just not a lot of leverage for it because of Trevor Williams. So probably not ultimately the team that I get to that's low owned, because I think there'll be an extra benefit later. Best I can do.
Yeah.
This game is like not all that interesting to you then, huh?
No, it's not.
Fair enough. We'll keep it moving. Pirates and Phillies, 4.3 run implied total for the Pirates, 4.8 for the Phils. Will Crow for the Pirates. I've got it as Vince Velasquez for the Phillies. No ownership to either guy. Should there be?
I think 5,300 for Crow is reasonable in larger field tournaments if you're looking to pay up for some bats. It probably won't be that necessary because there are 30 teams to grab hitters from. You're going to just get some underpriced bats. But Crow is fully stretched out. He's 5,300. It's a park downgrade for Philadelphia going into Pittsburgh, which is nice. Crow threw 90 pitches on July 24th, which was his last start. So there's no pitch count concerns there. There's certainly talent concerns for Crow. He struck out 20% of hitters so far, 4.79 xFIP, 2.08 home runs per nine. There's no guarantee at all he pitches well here, but I think just from a tournament upside standpoint, if you need a cheap pitcher, I'll probably end up with some $5,300 Crow.
Okay, not ending up with any $7,700 Velasquez.
I doubt it. The strikeout stuff hasn't been as good this year as in the past, only at 22.5%. He's allowing more than 2 home runs per 9 innings. The argument in his favor, obviously, is that he's facing this Pirates offense, which isn't very good. He's getting out of Philadelphia, going into Pittsburgh, which benefits him as well. But 7,700 is just not the most favorable price tag. He also hasn't been going deep in the games. He threw 53 pitches last time out, 84 the one before that, 74 the one before that. You can argue that in 2 of those he was pulled because he was absolutely terrible, not because of pitch count concerns. But even, he went 5 innings against Miami, gave up 1 hit, and was pulled at 84 pitches. So if he's pitching well and still only going to get like 84 pitches, that's not ideal at 7,700 when you're taking on the risk that he turns into Vince Velasquez and just gets lit up.
On the hitting side, Phillies rank pretty high on our top stack tool. They're my 4th ranked team on both FanDuel and DK. The Pirates, on the other hand, not all that high, but they are incredibly cheap and showing up as the most overowned team on the slate. I agree that they're aggressively overowned. They are the 2nd most overowned team for me, but I understand because of the pricing. I assume you'd like to talk about the Phillies first. Yeah,
definitely more interested in the Phillies. Will Crow this year has, I mentioned before, he's had issues with power. A 196 ISO to lefties, 274 to righties. But what actually looks interesting to me is that his expected ISO to lefties is only 129, but his expected ISO to righties is 264. So it seems like he's run pretty bad, gotten unlucky against lefties so far, but righties have just legitimately destroyed him. And now you're getting a Philadelphia lineup that, depending who's in the lineup, we have Q tags right now on Harper and Hoskins, but there's a lot of right-handed power potentially with Segura, Realmuto, McCutchen, Hoskins, at the top and in the middle of this order. Bryce Harper, you're clearly not going to shy away from if he's in the lineup. So while it is a park downgrade for Philly, I do think it's a high upside spot, and they're not pulling that much ownership right now.
No, I was a little surprised to see their lack of ownership. It's pretty much just Realmuto and Harper, which is, for the most, it's what you would expect. So I'm very happy getting to Philly. Either side. Harper 21% owned on FanDuel might be a little high for me, but still happy to get there. I'm guessing the Pirates are just fully off your radar because of their valueness and the fact that they're pulling a bunch of ownership.
Yeah, if the ownership stays how it is right now, it's a 15-game slate. I can find value elsewhere that just isn't going to get quite as much ownership. I do think it's a perfectly fine spot against Velasquez. He's gotten lit up this year, no real doubt about it, but it's just an example of, just because these Pirates bats might project as slightly better point per dollar plays than some others, it's baseball, and there's so much volatility there. And, you're either going to get a home run or, a couple doubles, or you're not, kind of thing. There's no real reason to be going with the highest owned or some of the highest owned value bats on a slate like this.
Okay. Who's your favorite bat in this game?
Positionally, Realmuto. From just a hitting standpoint, either Harper or Hoskins.
Okay. Anything else in Pirates Phils?
Nope.
To the Blue Jays and Royals we go. Blue Jays 6-run implied total. Royals 4.4. Ross Stripling, Daniel Lynch. No real ownership coming in here. How are you feeling about the pitching?
Not great. So one thing to mention, this game is in Toronto, so I'm actually kind of surprised at how high the implied run total is for the Blue Jays. But Toronto is still a hitter-friendly park. It may not be Buffalo, but still plays up power. So I think that the bats here still look good. I just wanted to mention that they were back in Toronto today. At least I believe. I saw that on Twitter earlier.
I think I see that. It's on MLB.com like that.
Okay. Yeah. So as far as the pitching goes, I think Stripling's okay, but I think you still can just find better pitching options on this slate. He's projected for 3% ownership. I think that's fine. On the other side, Daniel Lynch is one of the top pitching prospects for Kansas City. He struggled a ton early in the year, went back to the minors, came up against Detroit on the 25th, went 8 innings, struck out 4, had a really good start. I think that he's someone to pay attention to just because he is supposed to be really talented, and maybe he'd fix some things when he was down in AAA. But this still isn't the spot where I'm looking to test out Daniel Lynch against this Toronto lineup that just has nothing but right-handed power.
Yeah, I'm not seeing much here from a pitching perspective, but clearly seeing something from a hitting perspective. Toronto, top of the heap on our top stack tool, not even over-owned. Is this going to be one of your top plays for today?
Yeah, the way it looks right now, I mean, 10% chance of being the top stack on a slate with 30 teams, getting 8.5% aggregate ownership. So not getting too much ownership. And it makes sense because they're expensive. You're going to have to pay for them. You'll have to find cheaper pitching to get there. So far, it seems like DraftKings has actually done a pretty good job on hitter pricing because we haven't really run into a situation yet where it's like, well, this team's good and they are also $1,000 cheap across the board, or too cheap across the board. So you have, I think, a really high upside spot here, but it'll also be kind of difficult to get to, which is really appealing in tournaments because it lowers the ownership while, you know, you still have a really high ceiling. So I love Toronto the way it looks right now.
Yeah, they might be. I actually have them slightly over-owned, but still very clearly my number 2 team, and I expect them to be my number 1 team once whatever hashes out with the Cubs ends up hashing out. It's really difficult to not ever want to play the Blue Jays because they're fantastic, but I am a little nervous about the park. It is playing like that 10.5 run implied total is weird to me if they're in Toronto.
Yeah, it seems a little high.
Yeah, that's because like I don't think Lynch is like a total gas can. And
no, there's a decent chance Lynch is actually pretty good.
Right. I mean, he's perfectly average via steamer. That line seems weird, and I don't know what to make of it. So certainly getting to Toronto, maybe not as ultra aggressively as I would have thought, especially with them being at the top of the top stacks tool, but hard not to. Is there any interest to you in the Royals? I don't have any at all.
I do kind of like the salaries on Kansas City. Stripling's had power issues this year, 220 expected ISO to righties, 180 to lefties. You still have Jorge Soler sitting there at 2,900. And this is a guy with massive power when he makes contact. Carlos Santana's pretty cheap relative to other guys we've talked about so far at 4,100. Benintendi at 3,500. Dozier at 2,900. Like they're not good. They're not necessarily good hitters, some of them, in terms of, you know, overall production, but they have power. And in particular, the power upside you get from Soler at 2,900, that's just so much power per dollar, for lack of a better way to put that. It's really hard to find guys in that price range that have the just, you know, 2 home run upside that Soler does.
Just surprised to see him pulling 12% ownership on a 30 team slate. It's a big number.
Yeah, it is.
Favorite bat in this game?
Vlad.
Yeah. Kind of just has to be, right?
Yeah. Favorite bat on the slate, favorite bat in any game, Vlad.
Yeah, favorite bat in baseball right now. He's so good. It's so fun that he's good.
Yeah, I love it.
Like, obviously, we got a lot of his dad growing up, and he was really fun to watch.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite players when I was a kid.
Right. Like, and no one, I don't think there was anybody out there that was like, not a big Vlad Guerrero fan. Right. It was like, he's got a hose in right field, hits bombs. He
swings at literally everything.
Yeah. Like, he was, and seemed like a good guy, like all things considered. Yeah. So I think he was like pretty universally praised. So for his
he was one of those,
he
was one of those, like the Orioles have a habit, or they don't really do it anymore, of just picking up like old dudes that used to be good at the end of their careers. And when they picked up Vlad, it was still just like, I can't even be mad at this because whatever, I get to watch Vlad Guerrero on the Orioles.
Right. Yeah. I think he was pretty universally praised. And now to see his son come up and just rake is really cool. Yeah. He's like the modern day Ken Griffey Jr., I guess.
Well, like I love the Blue Jays right now just because you get Vlad's kid, you get Dante Bichette's kid, and you get Biggio's kid.
Yeah. It's so weird. Makes me feel old.
Yeah.
All right. Moving it on. Mets and Reds, 4.4 run implied total for the Mets, 4.1 for the Reds. Do I have that in here right? Am I crazy? No, I'm right. Carlos Carrasco going for the Mets. Sonny Gray going for the Reds. Is that really pulling no ownership? Is that not right?
What's your question?
Is Carlos Carrasco just not in our ownership? Is. Okay. Do you think Carlos Carrasco should be owned?
Probably not. I'm assuming he's not going too deep into this.
Okay.
Yeah, he hasn't gone more than 3 innings in a rehab start.
Okay, gotcha. I had him going a little bit deeper, and I think that is sort of the problem. So what's your expectation for how deep he can go in this game? Because I think that's an important talking point.
4 to 5 innings is typically what I assume whenever somebody. So I'm pulling up his minor league stuff now. He went 2 innings in his last start. He went. What am I looking at? Oh, there it is. Okay, yeah. So he's gone 2 innings, 1 2/3, and then 3 innings.
Okay.
I don't have pitch counts, but I don't know. Normally, when I see that, I assume the first start back in the majors ends up being like 4-ish innings.
Okay. All right. Well, if that's the case, then I understand why he's not pulling in the ownership. I had him a bit higher, and it was standing out to me. It was sort of like things weren't pulling through correctly, but I had him going a little bit deeper. What about your boy Sonny Gray? 11% owned on DraftKings, 9% owned on FanDuel.
Yeah, definitely interested there. He's pretty much always a pitcher that I'm interested in. We have seen a couple of bad starts from him back-to-back against Milwaukee and St. Louis, but overall this season, he's been good. He actually has one of the higher strikeout percentages on the slate at 28.8%. The matchup against the Mets is somewhat scary. Like they do have competent hitters in their lineup, but getting out of Cincy is nice for Gray as well. It's not a spot where if he starts pulling a lot of ownership, I wouldn't go there anyway, but projected for about 11.5% ownership right now, I do have interest in tournaments.
Shocked. At a crisp 9,200, so I guess he's not crossing that price threshold that we had, what is, I guess, 2 years ago now.
Yeah, I love, by the way, how he just like lives between, at 9K plus now, and it was a hot take when I was like, he's a 10K pitcher.
Yeah, I know. Oh God, it was so much fun. All right, well, let's talk through a little bit about the hitters where neither side is really pulling any ownership. I'd be happy to get to like a little bit of Mets on the FanDuel side just because of their pricing, but this doesn't feel like a spot where you get to a lot of offense.
Yeah, I don't see too much here. Like when you look at Sonny Gray's numbers, his expected ISO to lefties this year is below 100. He struck out 32.5% of lefties. So unless you're just getting really bad Sonny Gray today, that doesn't make Nimmo, McNeil, Smith, VR, Conforto look particularly good. Against righties, he's given up a little bit more, but he's still struck out 25.5% with a 147 expected ISO. So, you can always roster Pete Alonso, but I'm not too confident in that. Yeah, I'm not really on the Mets here. I do think you could make a case for the Reds, just hoping that Carlos Carrasco is awful. It's been a while since he pitched. You could just get a game where he's not ready. So right, there's always that upside in a situation like this, and you can't project it really. You kind of just there's more uncertainty here than normal. There's more uncertainty than a month from now when we have, assuming hopefully a healthy Carlos Carrasco, you would look at this and say like, no, Carlos Carrasco is really good. There's no reason to think the Reds have some unusually good game here. There is a little bit more wiggle room when we have no idea what Carlos Carrasco is going to look like.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's not a game that's pulling any real ownership. Who's highest? Jesse Winker at 3.9% on DK is the highest ownership number on anyone in this game on DraftKings or FanDuel outside of Sonny Gray, obviously. That
actually does make me kind of interested because Winker's price relative to a lot of the other hitters we talked about, I think is kind of cheap. We've seen hitter prices kind of jacked up across the board on DraftKings today, whereas Winker is just sort of holding at 4,400. You also have Aquino potentially in the lineup at 2,300, which would be a pretty good salary. So these are guys I think you could mix in. Just they're too cheap for, in Winker's case, his talent level overall. In Aquino's case, just he's too cheap for how far he can hit a baseball.
Anything else here for Mets and Reds?
No, not really. Overall, this kind of just feels like another game that gets written off because it's a 15-game slate.
Schedule for the rest of the day coming up at 1:30 p.m. Eastern time. Monkey Knife Fight MLB show with Eric and Greg. Then we take a little bit of a break, come back at 4:45 with the deeper dive. Adam will be back there with Greg. And then for MLB Live Before Lock, Eric comes back with T. McBee, Terry McBride. They will be breaking it all down all the way up until that 7:05 lock. Also, we've got a little bit of free content coming in today. MLB player rankings are free. I think player rankings in the baseball sense are significantly more valuable than normal because of the way performance, it allows you to bucket guys a little bit more, which I think is super relevant from baseball. So MLB player rankings, you can check those out. Those are coming straight from the boss man and the rest of the team behind the curtain. And MMA pro plays, if you're looking to play on this Saturday's UFC card, our MMA pro plays are free. Diving right back in here, game number 5, Detroit Tigers, your Baltimore Orioles. 5.1 run implied total for the Tigers, 4.4 for the Orioles. Skubal and Harvey, 21% owned. Skubal on the DK side, no ownership going to Matt Harvey. How are you handling the $7,500 Tariq Skubal?
I'll be rostering him. I think like he's pretty cheap at 7,500 on a slate where it looks like we would ideally save a little bit of money at pitcher. He hasn't gotten the Casey Mize treatment so far, or I should say the All-Star break, or around the All-Star break, Casey Mize treatment. They haven't really pulled Skubal back. He threw 88 pitches last time out, 83, 93, 94. So you've been getting around 90 pitches from him. He's got good strikeout stuff. He's one of the top pitching prospects in baseball, 27% strikeout percentage for the season. The only real issue he's had this year is he has allowed 2 home runs per 9 innings. So, certainly some risk going up against right-handed power in the Orioles lineup, especially if Trey Mancini is still on the Orioles by the time this game starts. You're going to have Hayes, Mancini, Mountcastle. These guys all have a decent shot at, doing damage against Skubal. But I think his strikeout upside at 7,500 is very appealing.
I had him coming in a little bit lower than our current ownership, but still standing out in that price tier. So I have no qualms getting there. Any interest in the 5K Harvey?
I don't even want to talk about this because I know I'm going to end up with him. There's nothing good to say. It's the best thing I can say about Matt Harvey is that I don't think he's quite as bad as people like to say he is.
Okay.
And he's not good, but he's got a 4.77 xFIP. He's only struck out 16.5% of hitters. He's allowed 1.2 home runs per 9. Like, he's not good. He's not a major league starting pitcher, but I don't think he's like quite as bad as people like to make it out to be. But really, it's just that he's 5K, and I already know I'm going to end up with tournament lineups that just pay down for him at pitcher because you're also getting ownership going to the Tigers bats, so that'll push him up a little bit for me. I rolled the dice on Alex Wells a decent amount yesterday. I rolled the dice on Jorge Lopez the day before that. It's gone miserably. This will probably go miserably, but I'll be right back there.
Fair enough. What would you like to do with these Tigers bats? Baddoo, Scope, Grossman pulling a lot of ownership at the top, and then it sort of just falls off a cliff. Is this a stack for you today?
Not the way it looks right now. They're just getting more ownership than they deserve. I do think it's a good spot. Yeah. Harvey's not good, obviously. But the Tigers, despite what they seem to do every game now, they're not a great offense either. I think Baddoo's a good play. I think Scope and Grossman are good plays. I think Haas is a good play. But it's just they're still not good enough hitters that I really want to be rostering them at high ownership night in and night out. So I think I'll be able to just find other spots to go to, even though I agree this is a good spot. Like, if for whatever reason the Tigers weren't getting ownership here, I would definitely be coming and saying, oh man, I really like the Tigers. But it's just I don't really see a reason to be heavy on a very popular Tigers team when there's 29 other teams to look at.
Yeah, they rank 3rd for me overall, but they are 28th for me in leverage. So that kind of explains it. That if you get a little bit of, it makes a lot of sense. It's clearly a great spot. Basically the second highest implied run total on the day behind the Blue Jays, basically right near the White Sox and Dodgers, depending on, how the line is going to break. That's just so much ownership, especially to the top of the order. You can mix and match, but it's not for me. Are the Orioles for you?
Yeah, I like the Orioles here because Skubal is getting some ownership. And like I said, Skubal has had issues with right-handed power. So you can go to Hayes, you can go to Mancini and Mountcastle. Ramon Urias, we've talked before. Sometimes I get more of him than I would really like, but he actually does project as a league average hitter. He's only 2,800 at shortstop. You get cheap outfield/catcher options with Ryan McKenna and Pedro Severino, respectively. Cedric Mullins obviously is very good at the top, though he is expensive. But I think the Orioles give you some leverage against Skubal. I think that there is power upside for them here, and they are projected to go a little bit under-owned. So I expect that I'll get the Orioles tonight.
Yeah, I think a little bit is fine. The Skubal ownership certainly helps in your interest in wanting to get to them. If he wasn't pulling the ownership, I don't think it'd be as appealing, but happy to be there. You think Mancini's gone?
No.
Do you want Mancini to be gone?
No.
Okay. Next up, the Marlins and the Yankees. 3.6 run implied total for the Marlins, 4.4 for the Yanks. Zach Thompson, Jamison Taillon. Thompson pulling just a minimal amount of ownership. Taillon, on the other hand, at 24%. How are you feeling about that going up against this Marlins team, which has basically the lowest implied total, but we've got a sea of teams in this 3.4 to 3.8 range?
I think it's a fair price point. I think it's a good matchup. There's no pitch count concerns or anything like that on Taillon. The Marlins are a bad offense that's getting worse. No more Starling Marte there. We know that Jazz Chisholm's out. Maybe they make some other moves today. Who knows? But it's also a favorable pitcher's park, which does become a little bit more important to me during the middle of the summer where you're going to get warm games outside. So Taillon's a little bit more expensive than I would like, but I do think it's deserved when you consider the matchup. Overall this year, he's struck out 23% of hitters. It hasn't been great. 4.74 xFIP, 1.5 home runs per 9. That's why I think, sort of in a vacuum, he's overpriced. But I think that if he were cheaper in this particular matchup, the ownership would probably get out of control. So I think that he's a good play, but I also wouldn't mind, moving like some of my Jamison Taillon to Sonny Gray for 500 more, for example.
Yeah, I think he's a little bit overowned with that 24% number. I mean, that's the third highest ownership number on a 30 pitcher slate basically today. Now, obviously some of those guys were throwing right in the garbage. I don't mind getting there, but to me, people are getting there a little bit more than they should.
Yeah, agreed. There's nothing really negative for me to say about the spot. No. It's just that I don't think Jamison Taillon is some just based on Jamison Taillon's talent, I don't think he's some lock to have a great game where other pitchers like Sonny Gray can't get there.
Right. Look, 12% odds of being a top 2 pitcher. If he's in 24% of the lineups, I'm just going to take my chances a little bit less. It's just not going to be super necessary.
And to compare him to Gray directly, Gray also a 12% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, and he's getting half the ownership.
Exactly. All right, let's talk about these Yankees bats with likely Joey Gallo in the lineup today. Yeah,
lineup gets more dangerous. You still will be missing – Rizzo's not there yet, but – obviously, the lineup is better with Joey Gallo. Stanton, I guess, not in the lineup either. Did he get hurt yesterday?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know. But Stanton's not in the projected lineup, but Joey Gallo is an upgrade there. It is a tough matchup, though. Zach Thompson has been.
Starlin Castro suspended 30 games.
Oh, yeah. The Nats already said that he won't be back with the team.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
The Nats said that domestic violence is something that they don't tolerate, and they don't care what the league does. Castro will not play for the Nats.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. The news just popped up a minute ago. So.
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, so Zach Thompson has been good this year, but there's all kinds of power upside here for the Yankees. Overall, Thompson has, I need to put him in.
This lineup, man. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's so good. He's allowed a 101 expected ISO to lefties, striking out 27.5%. He struck out 26% of righties. He's allowed a 158 expected ISO. So, again, he has been good. This park isn't great for hitting, but you're also just not getting much ownership going to the Yankees, which makes them appealing to me even in a difficult matchup because of how much power there is in this lineup.
I get like an aggregate ISO number for the team based on expected plate appearances through the order. The Yankees are sitting at 198 right now. If you swap out what I would imagine to be Gardner for Stanton in this spot, or however you want to do it, really, it's going to crest 200, which is just bonkers to think about. Imagine explaining that in 15 years ago, an aggregate 200 ISO for a lineup when it probably was 130 at that time.
Yeah, so it's insane how much power is in this lineup.
Sneaky fun to watch. Gallo's going to love this stuff once he gets himself into Yankee Stadium.
I hope the Yankees fans don't break Gallo.
Yeah, well, they probably will.
I guess, honestly, I hope they do. But because I like Joey Gallo and I'm a Joey Gallo fan, I hope that they don't.
I mildly like the Yankees today, though. I thought that I would like them a little bit more, but the Marlins park kind of mutes things a little bit. 4.4 run implied total is pedestrian for this slate. They're just middle of the pack for me. Didn't expect that, though.
Yeah, I think it's just, and they're facing a good pitcher. Thompson it has just flat out been good this year. So that plus the park, you're basically playing them because they are a crazy good offense that isn't getting ownership. Yeah. Not because
when it pops, whew, boy,
yeah, exactly. There's nothing surrounding the Yankees here that you're pointing to as a reason to play them. It's not a good matchup. It's not a good hitting environment. It's not a good park. There's nothing saying, oh, this is why the Yankees are great, other than look at the bats in the Yankees lineup. And if nobody else wants to play these guys, then I'll take my chances.
Exactly. Any chance you're going to the Marlins bats in this spot up against the pretty sizable ownership of Jameson Taillon?
I don't really see it. It's kind of appealing because of the ownership Taillon's getting, but it's just still such a low probability spot. I think given the park and the talent in Miami's lineup or lack thereof, if this were a smaller slate, I'd be more inclined to do it, but it's just so hard to see Miami beating out 29 other teams.
I completely agree. I don't have anything really else to recommend in this game. Do you?
No. So one other thing, and I don't have it in front of me, so I'll just let you know. I'll mention it when I get it pulled up. But the Yankees bullpen might be kind of dead, which would increase upside for Miami. But I still don't think it really matters on a 15-game slate,
particularly in Miami. If you flip flop this game and put it in New York, I think that could change the scope of it a little bit. Miami, one of the harder pitcher parks.
If the active pitchers on the site I'm looking at are correct, their bullpen looks okay anyway. Okay. Like they've been overworked, but it's not anything crazy where they have nobody available.
Okay. Rays and Red Sox, 4.6 run implied total for the Rays, 4 for the Sox. Josh Fleming, Martin Perez, no ownership at all coming into the pitchers. Do you get to Fleming or Perez here?
No, I don't really see any reason to. Fleming has been throwing more pitches recently with 72 in each of his last 2 outings, but he's facing the Red Sox. He's cheap, but it's not like he's 5K. He's not Matt Harvey. So I don't really see a reason to go there. And then I'm not paying $8,200 for Martin Perez. Just doesn't strike out enough guys. It is a good pitcher's park, but dangerous Tampa Bay lineup, and you don't get enough strikeout upside from Perez.
I have the Rays pretty much middle of the pack in terms of overall ranking, but they are pulling no ownership. I would expect to at least get to a decent bit of Rays stacks and have no problem getting over the field. How do you feel about Tampa today?
I think they look pretty good, but again, I don't like the park. Martin Perez does an okay job at limiting power, which hurts as well, but he has still allowed 1.2 home runs per 9 this season. Right-handed power in particular has been what gets to him with a 182 expected ISO. So I think, if Nelson Cruz is in the lineup, I think he looks good. I think Randy Arozarena looks good, but pretty much just a middle of the field stack. And it's not like Perez is going to pull any ownership to make Tampa Bay more appealing.
Yeah, that would be ideal. If Perez was at 10% or something today, that would be fantastic, but it's just not going to be happening. Red Sox probably a little under-owned on the FanDuel side, but also, a relatively low-end option today, at least the way that they're grading out for me. Do you have interest in Boston?
Kind of just rinse and repeat what we just said about the Yankees and apply it to the Red Sox, because I don't think this looks like a great spot. Josh Fleming hasn't been bad this year. He doesn't strike out a lot of guys, only 11.5% of right-handed hitters, but only a 142 expected ISO. Terrible park to hit in.
Yep.
It's going to be a bullpen game after Fleming, 4 innings or so. Only a 4.2 implied run total for Boston. So again, nothing surrounding this looks good. But at the same time, you have 1% aggregate ownership going to a team that has Kike Hernandez, Xander Bogaerts, JD Martinez, Hunter Renfroe. It's a really high upside offense. So it's not difficult to be, if you're playing 150 lineups, to be overweight on a 1% owned Red Sox team. But if I'm playing single entry or 3 max, I'd be pretty surprised if the Red Sox are a team that jumps to the top for me.
I talked before about my weighted ISO for the Yankees being at 198, the Red Sox coming in at a crisp 199.
Yeah.
And if I just simply flipped Christian Vasquez and Alex Verdugo in the 6 and 7 spot where I have them, that would probably be enough to get you that extra 1/1000th of a ISO point and get to a 200, which, God, baseball's crazy right now. Anything else for Rays Red Sox?
Nope.
Alrighty, off to my Braves. 3.7 run implied total for Atlanta, 4.3 for the Brewers. Touki Toussaint, Corbin Burns. Burns is pulling a lot of ownership. 10,200 on DraftKings, 32% ownership. Toussaint pulling nothing. 10% ownership for Burns, by the way, on FanDuel. How is Burns grading out to you? $100 below Lance Lynn, who is the most expensive pitcher on this slate.
I think Burns looks great. He has the highest strikeout percentage on the slate by a massive margin, 36.6%. The next closest is Touki Toussaint in his 2 starts at 29.4%. Burns has walked 4.5% of hitters. He has a 2.18 xFIP. I don't see any reason to not like Corbin Burns a lot here.
Yeah. To me, he's my second ranked pitcher, but I do think like I have Lance Lynn like a pretty solid step ahead of him. And at comparable ownership, like if I'm flipping a coin between the two, I'm going to get to Lynn first.
Yeah, I can see that.
But either way, I'm getting to both. I have no qualms whatsoever. Any Toussaint?
Yes.
Talk to me.
I'm surprised he's not projected for more ownership. Like he's getting none right now. Maybe that increases because we also have him with a 0% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, which that's incorrect. Sure. He's stretched out. He threw 90 pitches last time out, went 7 innings against Philly. There's no pitch count concerns here. He's only 6,900. As I said before, in his 2 starts so far this year in the majors, he struck out 29%. In the minors this year at AAA in 16 2/3 innings, 4 starts, he struck out 35%. This is someone that not long ago was a top pitching prospect. He's still, Fangraphs has him 57th overall in baseball. He's looked very good through his first 2 starts. He's only 6,900. He's fully stretched out. The Brewers aren't, a pushover lineup, but it's also not the scariest lineup in the world. I'm surprised. I think it just changes as the day goes on and he at least pulls some ownership. But regardless, I'm interested here because I think that he gives you substantial upside for his salary.
I have him at 7%, so I'd be more than happy to get to a little bit of Toussaint, particularly given the amount of ownership that's coming into the Brewers. I have the Brewers as the most over-owned stack for the day. If I check out our top stack tool, I hope it's comparable. And it is. They are third, however. What do you want to do with the Brew Crew here?
I think I'll probably stay away because, for one, I think Toussaint is pretty good. 2, you're just getting a lot of ownership going to Milwaukee right now. They came through big for me last night. They've come through actually a couple times for me recently, but this is a spot where it looks like they're going to get the ownership, and it makes sense because Rowdy Tellez is 2,600, which is still insanely cheap. Definitely a spot you can look to in cash if you need to. Avi Garcia is still 3,600. It's a pretty inexpensive offense with a middle of the pack run total, so I understand why they're getting the ownership. But I respect Toussaint. I think he's a pretty good arm, and I don't really see a need to get to Milwaukee at their ownership right now.
No, I find them to be abhorrent given that ownership. Yeah, I said it. Braves bats against Burns seems like not the best play here.
Yeah, I don't really see a need to do that. It would be one thing if Burns were getting like 60% ownership or something, but he's getting 30%. And again, there's 29 teams Atlanta has to beat.
Yeah, it's not for me. Anything else, Braves and Brewers?
No, I'll be on the pitching here.
Okay. Well, before I regale you with our current promo, please hit that like button. We're at 59 likes. We've got 273 people in here. I think we can get that number north of 100. So if you haven't done it yet, hit that thumbs up. Helps us out a ton. Costs you nothing. What's up?
I was just going to say, someone mentioned it in chat, but I was going to say it as soon as you were done too. It is hot and humid in Atlanta, so that is something that does benefit the bats. It's still not something that, like, I'm not going to take that one piece of information and change my stance, but that is one thing kind of working against Burns and Toussaint.
Okay. MLB Strategy Show, one big word. That is the promo code you can use to get 25% off your first week of Awesemo Plus. You get projections, ownership, premium slack, lineup builder, top stacks, top pitchers. And that's just all about baseball. But that promo code will cover everything we've got. PGA, MMA, NASCAR, NFL is coming fast and furious. You don't want to miss out on our NFL content because we're going to have a ton of it. But MLB Strategy Show will get you 25% off that first week. That's a pretty solid deal to get behind the paywall, figure out what we got, understand the lay of the land. So if you have been wondering if you wanted to sign up, I think now is a pretty good time to do so. Use the promo code that we've got up on the screen right now. On to game number 9. Rangers and Mariners. 4.1 run implied total for the Rangers, 4.4 for the Mariners. Colby Allard, and I've got Logan Gilbert going for the Mariners here, but I don't think that they have named a starter as of yet. Allard pulling 7% ownership on DK. We don't have Gilbert in our current ownership projections. Do you have interest in pitching here?
Yeah, both sides actually, assuming it's Gilbert. So Colby Allard at 5,100 is just too cheap for his talent level. I'd rather go to Allard than Matt Harvey, for example, which isn't a ringing endorsement, but it's just I think he's better than Harvey is. 20% strikeout percentage for the season, only a 4% walk percentage. He's had a home run issue with 1.88 home runs per nine, reasonable 4.33 xFIP. But again, it's just he's 5,100. He probably should be like 6,500 or something like that. So I don't mind going there. On the other side, and for what it's worth, Allard, fully stretched out, so no concerns there. On the other side, if it is Logan Gilbert, he hurt me badly last weekend, but very, very badly. But I'll go back to him here. It's a good spot against Texas. No more Joey Gallo to worry about. Gilbert is one of the top pitching prospects in baseball. He's been very good in the majors so far. 28.8% strikeout percentage, only a 5.5% walk percentage. Been a legitimately good pitcher, except for last Saturday when I needed him to just be average. But good spot here against Texas. I love Gilbert at 7,200 if he is in fact the pitcher for Seattle.
I have Gilbert in at 13% after my run, so I would be happy to get there. I have Colby Allard at 12%, so I share the exact same sentiment as you. I'm interested in the pitching. Are you interested in any of the hitting, though?
Not really. Both offenses are pretty weak.
Yeah.
Both pitchers, I think Gilbert's legitimately good. I think Allard is okay. I wouldn't mind Mitch Haniger, except 5,400 is pretty tough to get to. If you had more favorable pricing on the Mariners, I could see getting there because Allard has had the home run issues this year, but you're paying a premium to get to any bats. So it's pretty tough. I think Haniger's the top play from Seattle, but it's just really difficult to prioritize.
Yeah, I think they're going a little under-owned, but they can't be too big of a priority. I have them ranked 17th, so being under-owned at 17 doesn't really make you fly into my top 5 very quickly. So this is mostly pitching, and even then, it's scary-ish. Well, it's not scary pitching because of the matchup. It's just, they're like a step behind.
I would be very confident in Logan Gilbert. Like if I'm going into the 8:00 games and I have a good team going and it has Logan Gilbert, I will feel good. Like last weekend, I had a good team with Gilbert against Oakland, and I did not feel good because Oakland scares the hell out of me. But
yeah, that's fair. Texas
isn't good. And I mean, Logan Gilbert has legitimately been a very, very, very good pitcher since being called up.
Skubal or Gilbert?
Gilbert.
Okay. Skubal pulling 21% ownership right now. We don't have Gilbert in there. I'm anxious to see what the relationship between their ownership numbers is once we get there. Anything else, Rangers, Mariners?
To go a little bit deeper on Gilbert, I guess.
Yeah.
Fangraphs has him as the number 3 prospect for Seattle, 35 in baseball. He made 9 starts at Double-A he made 9 starts at Double-A in 2019. Went 50 innings, struck out 28.7 hitters. This year, he made 1 start at Triple-A and then came up to the majors. He has since made 12 starts, gone 56 2/3 innings, struck out 28.8% with a 5.5% walk percentage. Just love him in the spot against Texas if he is in fact pitching.
To the White Sox we go, hosting the Cleveland Guardians. 5-run implied total for the White Sox, 3.5 for Cleveland. Lance Lynn, JC Mejia. Lance Lynn getting the most ownership of anybody on the slate, 32% on DraftKings, 20% on FanDuel. Is there anything interesting here for you for Lynn, or is it just kind of, yes, he is probably the best option you can get today?
Yeah, that's what it is. Like, he's going to keep throwing pitches and go pretty deep into the game. It's a good matchup against Cleveland. You don't have the weather concerns that Corbin Burns does, which I think is a reasonable tiebreaker. The Indians implied run total slightly lower than the Braves, probably for that reason. The only, I guess, issue I have with Lynn versus Burns is that you are taking a hit in strikeout percentage. Burns' strikeout percentage is nearly 10 points higher than Lance Lynn's, and they're the same salary. So just in terms of reaching a ceiling, Burns, I think, is the one that's more likely to get there just because he strikes out so many more hitters. But it's a better matchup for Lynn. He does project slightly higher, so I don't have any issue with the ownership he's pulling.
I assume no Mejia?
No Mejia.
I have the White Sox 6th on DraftKings, 6th on FanDuel, 5th in terms of leverage on DraftKings, and my number 1 leverage option on FanDuel, no one other than Moncada, above 6% ownership. How do you like the White Sox as a stack today? I'm
so tired of this team. I'm glad they didn't come through yesterday, but they've been a pretty expensive team recently. He has had pretty drastic splits so far this year. He struck out 32% of righties while holding them to a .085 expected ISO. Meanwhile, he's only struck out 17.5% of lefties with a 226 expected ISO. I think, even if you expect those numbers to come together somewhat, you're clearly going to target left-handed power against him. That gives you Moncada, it gives you Sheets, it gives you Brian Goodwin as the guys that really stand out. Other than that, we still have to wait and see what this lineup's going to look like as well. Eloy Jimenez dealing with a hamstring issue. Jose Abreu, I'm not sure what held him out yesterday, but he may or may not be back today. But I think it's Moncada, Sheets, Goodwin that look really good to me. Never going to talk anyone off of Tim Anderson or a cheap Andrew Vaughn, but really like whatever left-handed powers in this lineup.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty tasty. We'll see if Eloy ends up in that lineup. He is the sole person on the White Sox in double digits in ownership. If you pull Eloy out of this lineup, obviously he's going to be the best option because of his $3,200 price tag, but that makes them even easier or even less owned in the aggregate, something to pay attention to. I can't imagine you're getting to Cleveland against Lance Lynn.
Yeah, same boat. Just not a small enough slate that I want to do that.
Okay. Anything else for White Sox and Guardians?
Nope.
God, that is still so hard to do.
Well, fortunately, you don't need to do it for another 8 months, but you're insisting on it.
I have to, man. I have to. I need to beat it into my own head. Otherwise, I'm 100% coming back to this in April of 2022 and getting that wrong for months on end. Cardinals and Twins, 4.1 run implied total for the Cardinals, 4.4 for the Twins. Wade LeBlanc, Jose Barrios, no ownership going to LeBlanc. Barrios pulling 14% on DK, 6% on FanDuel. I have Barrios properly owned. Any thoughts here at 8,100 against the Cardinals?
I don't think he is on the Twins when this game starts, but
yeah, that's also possible.
If he is, I think he's underpriced. Why is Jose Barrios $8,100? He's striking out 25.5% of hitters this year, 3.58 xFIP, one home run, a little over one home run per 9 innings, 25.6% strikeout percentage against righties with a 119 expected ISO allowed, going up against this extremely right-handed heavy Cardinals lineup. They may or may not have Arenado available today. I think 8,100 is very, very cheap for Barrios if he does, in fact, make this start.
He's my 4th highest projected pitcher today.
And it's nice that, the deadline is at 4 because it's not like you have to have concerns where he gets traded after the 3rd inning. If he's on the Twins when this game starts, he's on the Twins when it ends, and there's no concerns there.
Yeah. Where do you think he's going?
San Diego.
Okay. Any LeBlanc?
No.
Yeah, I'd rather rest or Matt LeBlanc at that point. I'm glad you got that, actually. You never know with you. That's TV. If it were a movie reference.
It's Friends, man. You can.
Sure.
I'll get Friends references every day.
Okay. That's fine. On the Twins side, Josh Donaldson, Mitch Garver, double digits in ownership. Everything else is single digits. I have the Twins ranked 8th on DK, probably a little over owned in the aggregate. I have them 11th on FanDuel, so I like the pricing a little bit more on DraftKings. How do you feel about the Twins against LeBlanc?
I think it's a pretty good spot. I'm kind of surprised the implied run totals as low as it is. LeBlanc's allowed a 202 ISO to righties this year. He's only struck out 16% of them. To me, that sets up nicely for guys like Miguel Sano that have contact problems, but that hit the ball really far. I think Brent Rooker is a good value. He projects to be a quality power hitter. He's only 3,200, most likely batting second. So I like those guys. Of course, I like Josh Donaldson at 4,100. Polanco at 4,200 is fine. Garver, if he's in the lineup, will look good. So I am interested in Minnesota. Again, like you said, a little bit more ownership than I would like, but it's still low enough where on a 15-game slate, I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Yeah, we're sort of in the same boat here. Do you get to any Cardinals against Barrios? This doesn't seem like a very good Cardinals spot to me.
No, it doesn't seem that good because, like I said, Barrios has really been lights out against right-handed bats this year. That's basically all that the Cardinals have. And then right now we're not even projecting Barrios to pull that much ownership, only getting about 14%. So not a team that's really going to grade out for me well in any way that would make them pop up.
Any more thoughts? Cardinals and Twins?
No.
Now is the time we get to talk about the presenting sponsor of this show. That would be Prize Picks. You do not have to deal with sharks, optimizers, mass entry. You're either picking 2, 3, 4, or 5 of the available players that exist to go over or under their projected scores or potentially some player props. If you correctly pick a 5-player lineup, you can net up to 10x your entry fee. Well, that's NBA, MLB, WNBA, NFL, even esports. honestly, the list at the top of the Prize Pick screen is crazy. I don't even know what some of these things are. Olympic basketball is on here. They have highlight on here. Good luck finding any highlight tips. I don't have them. Talk to maybe Ben Raza. If anybody's going to know anything about highlight, it's probably him. Big Three is available. It looks like they've got disc golf potentially, which is kind of fun. All sorts of crazy stuff at Prize Picks, but we're going to talk at least a little bit about the baseball side. I've got 2 players for you, Adam. Are you ready?
Sure.
Matt Olson, over under 6.5 fantasy points today. Angels and A's, the game that we're going to be talking about next.
We haven't projected for like 11, so I'll take the over.
FanDuel score. Oh, yeah. Wow. Yeah, I have them at 10.2. I flip-flopped my columns recently. I moved DraftKings to the left. I used to have FanDuel on the left. So when I immediately looked at it, I was like, dude, I've got them at 7.7. This is like a very reasonable spot. And then I looked and it was 10.2. So yeah, that's Prize Picks will adjust these lines throughout the day. So make sure you keep your eye on it. That could be higher as we get further along in the day. But yes, that is a snap over. And I have a sneaky suspicion this next one going to be a snap over as well. How do you feel about Justin Upton over under 5.5?
Yeah, we have him at 9.4.
Yeah, I got him at 8.5. So that's pretty tasty as well. Just make sure if that number starts creeping up, you're cross-referencing with projections at awesemo.com. Here's the big stuff for Prize Picks, everybody. Use the promo code Awesemo and get yourself $100 instant match deposit bonus. If you deposit $50, they match with 50. If you deposit 100, they match with 100. That is an excellent way to start your bankroll. We've got plenty of resources on the website to really help you out here. And we'll be talking about those types of projections throughout the show. So that should help too. Download the app in the App Store or in the Google Play Market. I think it's called the Google Play Market. I don't know. Get an iPhone, everybody. Adam gave you the goods on those 2 plays, but seriously, use that promo code Awesemo. And thank you, Prize Picks, for being the presenting sponsor. We've got 4 to go. Angels and A's, Patrick Sandoval, Chris Bassett. Sandoval actually pulling a little bit of ownership, 9% right now on the DK side. Chris Bassett, just 8%. I'd rather get to a little bit more Bassett at 9,600. I think he's going a tad under-owned. What say you?
Yeah, I'm with you. Just not really pulling any ownership. And on the one hand, I get it because it's not difficult to get from Bassett to Burns or Bassett to Lynn, and they do project better. But I think this is at the very least a reasonable spot to pivot if you do happen to have a chalkier lineup. If for whatever reason you have some, a Brewers lineup or a Tigers lineup or whatever, and you're looking to pay up for a pitcher, but you don't want to add a 30% owned guy in Burns or Lynn, Bassett is a good pitcher. It's an okay matchup against the Angels. Not the best matchup in the world, but not a terrible one either. Bassett for the season has struck out 25% of hitters, just about. 1 home run per 9, 3.96 xFIP. He's a good pitcher. He's not in the same category as Lynn. He's certainly not in the same category as Corbin Burns. But when you're talking a 1-game sample size and he's getting 20% of the ownership of those guys, it is at the very least a reasonable spot to be getting some more of him in your lineups that are otherwise more popular.
Do we get to any bats here? Because this might actually be the worst game on this. Well, there might be another one coming up. This might be the worst game on the slate.
Yeah, it's a pretty difficult one to get to. Patrick Sandoval is a good pitcher as well, coming off of, I think it was his last start that he almost threw the no-hitter against the Twins. On different slates, I would have a lot of interest in Sandoval. I think he'll be pretty tough to get to on this one because the A's lineup is really scary. Sandoval's not cheap, and there are just so many options here that I think it's going to be difficult to get to much Sandoval. But he's also not a pitcher that I really love targeting against. So far this year, he's held righties to a 151 ISO, 124 expected ISO. He struck out 27% of them. The only real thing that I could say bats-wise is Oakland, to me, is just like the Yankees, just like Boston. They're not getting any ownership. They're actually projected for even less ownership than the Yankees or the Red Sox. And they have massive amounts of upside in this lineup. Like when they go off, they just have so much power. But it's still a big slate. It's going to be tough to really get a lot of Oakland because Sandoval is good.
Anything else here? I don't have anything to add.
No.
Diamondbacks and Dodgers, 3.8 run implied total for the D-backs, 5.1 for the Dodgers. Zach Gallen, Tony Gonsolin. No real ownership coming into the pitchers. I'd be happy to get some shares of Gonsolin. Do you like either side of the pitching?
Sort of, but not really. I think it's difficult for me to get to Gonsolin at 7,900 when he's thrown 83, 80, and 81 pitches in his last 3 starts.
Yeah.
He's a good pitcher and the matchup's good against Arizona. So I can see taking some shots on him, but there's just so many other guys in that price range. Like I would rather go to Berrios if he is an option. I would rather go to Logan Gilbert for less.
Yeah.
It's so that's kind of difficult for me, but he's only getting 5% ownership. So I don't mind Gonsolin here if you do get to some. I just have a couple of other guys I prefer a little bit more. As far as Gallen goes, 9,500, I think that's a really tough sell against the Dodgers on a slate where there's so much good pitching.
Dodgers bats, on the other hand, though, they are my number 4 on DK, number 3 on FanDuel, probably a little over-owned, but you get what you pay for north of an aggregate 200 ISO. It's been what I've been looking for this entire time. They just don't have any holes in this lineup, really. What do you do with the Dodgers bats?
Yeah, I think they are a pretty good stack. Right now, they have the second highest top stack percentage, and they are getting a little bit less ownership than they deserve. Gallen's a pitcher that I do think is good. He's done a very good job at limiting left-handed power this year with an expected ISO below 100. He's given up more power to righties with a 194 expected ISO, which does make sense, even though he's right-handed, because he's got a ridiculously good changeup that helps to neutralize lefties and doesn't play as well, and he doesn't throw it as much against righties. But he's still struck out 32.5% of righties, so it's not like he's not bad against them. He just gives up a little bit more power. But the Dodgers do have a lot of power in this lineup. Kind of the one thing I come back to though is I don't think. Granted, the Dodgers do have a 5.3 implied run total, so they are expected to do better. But just thinking about like the matchup here, I don't think Zach Gallen is like a much better matchup than Patrick Sandoval or Josh Fleming or Zach Thompson. So it's kind of, I'm not really sure why I want the Dodgers at 6 times the ownership of the Red Sox or the Yankees or the Athletics. To me, it's kind of the same spot. It's a little bit better, but it's still a really high upside offense facing a pitcher that I think is good.
Welcome back, Corey Seager, by the way. Highest owned guy on both DK and FanDuel right now.
Yeah, that's at 5K, really. Oh, wait, highest owned from the Dodgers, you mean?
Yeah. Well, okay. I mean, not like for the entire slate.
Yeah, I was like, that seems aggressive.
No. I like him, but not that much.
Yeah.
I saw that earlier today. Anything else here? I'm guessing you're not a huge Diamondbacks guy. I mean, they're not pulling as much ownership as I think they should, but at the same time, it's not like they're a priority for me.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I think Cole Calhoun at 2,800 can be pointed out because he's good and he's cheap. Kind of in that like just Jorge Soler category where it's not a good matchup, but he's just more talented than his salary. But yeah, it's basically the Dodgers bats for me, just with the caveat that I don't really know they should be quite as popular as they are relative to some of the other really high upside offenses.
Anything else here? Diamondbacks, Dodgers.
No, that's it. 2
final games. Giants, Astros, 3.8 run implied total for the Giants, 3.7 for the Stros. Kevin Gausman, Framber Valdez. Not a ton of ownership coming to either pitcher, but they're in that 8 to 10 range. That's about where I have them. Do you have preferences between the two?
I prefer Gausman just because I think the strikeout stuff's better. And that's pretty much always my tiebreaker. Even though the Astros themselves don't strike out a lot, I just always prefer going to a guy with a 29% strikeout percentage versus someone that strikes out about 20% of hitters if I have the choice. So 21% rather for Valdez. But I think they should pretty much pull the ownership that they're getting. Gausman coming around 10%. I think that makes sense. 9,400 is a very reasonable price tag for him, but it is a tough matchup. Again, the Astros don't strike out a ton. And then the Giants also just a pretty good offense. Valdez, the much lower strikeout percentage. So no problems with either pitcher, not really looking to take bats against them, but also have plenty of other pitchers that I prefer.
Is there any chance you're rostering either side of this offense, Giants or Astros?
I mean, in 150 lineups, I'm not going to say no. I might have like an Astro stack or something, but definitely not like seeking them out or prioritizing them or anything.
No, this seems like unquestionably the most difficult spot to get to if you're trying to roster hitters. The hitting environment is bad. Wind is blowing out, but only at roughly 10 miles per hour. You're going to need a lot more than that to really cook up in San Francisco. So this one's just a total stay away to me.
Yeah, it's pretty much where I'm at.
Then we close it out. Padres and Rockies. 4.7 run implied total for the Pods, 3.4 for the Rockies. Ryan Weathers, John Gray, potentially. No ownership going to either pitcher. You rostering either one of these guys?
Probably not. I'd be a little interested in Weathers if he were going deeper into games. Only 73 pitches last time out. 29 before that, 71 before that. He did throw 83 on July 1st. But there's enough cheap guys where either they are like a lot less expensive, like Colby Allard, where if I'm going to roll the dice on a very mediocre arm, I'd rather just pay the minimum. And then, also you have the pitch count concerns with Weathers. On the other side with Gray, getting outside of Coors is nice, but going up against the Padres is just a really difficult spot. There's enough other pitching options with relatively low ownership. Like, I'd rather just pay $100 for Jose Barrios as opposed to getting the Gray.
Padres offense, sort of middle of the pack in our top stack tool. I have them 7th on DraftKings and under-owned. Do you want to get to San Diego against John Gray?
Kind of more of the same. It's like every really good offense faces a good pitcher too.
Yeah.
I think Gray is pretty good overall this season. He's held righties to a 134 expected ISO, 124 to lefties, 25.5% strikeout percentage against righties. The Padres are still a very dangerous lineup, though. They have a 5.1 implied run total. This is another team where they're only getting about 3% ownership, whereas the Dodgers are getting 6%. I don't think there's a massive difference in talent between Zach Gallen and John Gray. And I think that there's massive upside in both the Dodgers lineup and the Padres lineup. So, I think that moving maybe some Dodgers ownership to the Padres makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. I'm going to be happy to get there. I think these guys are just halfway under owned in the grand scheme of things. Like, if Machado's 3.5% owned, I'd like to have a little bit more than that. It's not fun to go up against John Gray, but I mean, the 4.7 run implied total is pretty nice. It's sort of like a step up. It's closer to that high, like throwing away the Blue Jays being at 6. It's closer to this top tier than the low 4s that we see for most of the slate. So I have no issue at all going to San Diego. I think they're going a bit underrepresented right now. What about Rockies against Ryan Weathers? We're not really seeing a ton of ownership coming in. They're kind of middle of the pack. The implied run total sucks. There's nothing here really for me.
Trevor Story, if he's still a Rocky, and then move on. CJ Cron at 3,900 if he's in the lineup looks good too.
Anything else? Pods and rocks?
Nope.
All right, let's sum this one up. Who are your favorite arms for today as of 12:08 p.m. Eastern time?
Corbin Burns, Lance Lynn, Logan Gilbert, assuming he is pitching.
Okay. Favorite stacks?
Toronto. I like Baltimore, even though I also like Scooble. I don't know. There weren't a lot of stacks I loved, I guess.
Yeah. I got the Cubs at the top of the heap. Blue Jays probably slightly overowned for me, but I'll still be getting to a lot because they look fantastic. Not going to get to the Tigers or Pirates with any sort of regularity. Padres and White Sox looking a little bit sneakier than I thought they would. That's it, man. We are done. 15 games up, 15 games down. Any final thoughts? You excited to get back here in 4 hours and 45 minutes?
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited to play more lineups. It's fun when you're winning. It becomes a drag when you're not.
Yeah, it's weird how that works. It's incredible how much better you feel when you have tens of thousands of dollars coming in from your successes. Anyway, congrats to Adam for a big day yesterday. Good luck tonight, everybody. Again, we got multiple shows coming up throughout the rest of the night, including 2+ hours of additional MLB content. Good luck. I will see you guys again no time soon. I'll be back in like the second week of August. I'm out of here. Have fun, everybody.